Hello gamers, all the cards for Heirs of the Omen has been revealed, so with tradition, let's take a look at every single class and review each of the individual cards. So obviously to save some time, I have a tendency to go very well, not very decently in-depth into each and every single card, and it will take a very long time. So this time, to facilitate to make this faster, in fact, actually, I'm going to just quickly breeze through the archetype and just talk about the cards that I think are going to be the most important. So, first up, the legendaries in first craft with Izudia Annihilate Manifestation. Obviously, he looks crazy at first glance, well, or maybe not as crazy as you want it to look. He has his token spell, which does 20 damage to an enemy leader if you have him on field. But the Annihilation Onslaught costs 6 and only reduces by 1 at the end of turn. So, best case scenario, you play Izudia on 8 and evolve him, and then after 4 turns on turn 12, you'll probably be able to play another Izudia as well as an Annihilate Onslaught for 20 damage. So that is the goal to... That is probably the ideal world that you're dealing with right now if you are planning to play Izudia and Annihilation Manifest. Well, another way you could probably get it out earlier is on turn 11, but you will require the use of a Carbuncle as well as a Super Evolve. And from what I look at some of the other cards in this current pack, it doesn't look like they are super Evolve dependent. So this one might actually genuinely be viable in some way, but it's also not, because at 8 play point you expect a follower to be able to remove at least two other followers without using an evolve, and with using an evolve you want it to remove at least 3. So being only removing 2 followers despite being at 8 play point does make it a lot more susceptible to to white boards, but that's where the other cards in your deck comes into play. Supplicant of Unkilling as well as Congregant of Unkilling are all basically one card board wipes. Supplicant is probably the better one since it does it on fanfare and is quite cheap relatively cheap for this kind of effect at 6. Not the best though, but it's still it's pretty good. -0, -3 gets rid of most chump blocks. Chump bots, sorry. Not chump blocks. Chump bots usually are this weak. If anything is above 4 hit pounds, I don't think you're already winning the game in the first place. And Congregant of Unkilling is a pretty good bridge going later in the game, since it's a lot of stats with quite a good keyword as well, rush as well as ward. I think usually with Congregant of Unkilling you have at least 3 followers to remaining after trading out every single enemy of your opposing follower. So this one is honestly not bad, but there's probably ways to counter this, since, well, it is a 9 play point. It is very heavy for Forest Craft card. Usually Forest Craft card wants it to be cheap, but unfortunately that's not the case for the Annihilation / Unkilling archetype. So next up, we have Cruel Heir to Unkilling. This is our new generic splashable into a most Forest Craft card legendary that I've seen so far. It's a 4/1/3, which is honestly below average stat line, but we get is fixed by the fact that she has ambush, so she's going to be very hard to remove unless your opponent has random targeting, which unfortunately is there's probably quite a number of, so you don't expect her to live past 1 turn. But if she does live past 1 turn, you do get her ability to restore one defense to your leader for every turn she is alive, so long you reduce a follower of an defense of an enemy follower. That's okay, that's fine. That's not the most interesting effect. The effect that makes her somewhat good is actually her fanfare, which nerfs all enemy followers by -0, -2. Basically just a one slot bot wipe for Forest. 4 play point. You probably don't want to run too many copies of her, since by herself her power level is really underwhelming. So you just run her for the bot wipe, and once she's removed, you basically forget about her after that. You probably run 1 or 2 as a tech card. A Super Evolve is also very interesting, giving -1/-1 to all allied followers that enters play on your opponent's next turn. Note that this only lasts for 1 turn because of how Crest works. It countdowns once at the start of the turn, and then at the start of the next turn it is completely removed. So maybe anti-synergy with Haven as well, just saying. But of course, this quest actually does affect some decks, specifically maybe sword decks. It nerfs all their 2/2 followers into 1/1 followers, making it ridiculously easy to remove. It stops it beats from spawning ghosts. It stops Mimi and Coco. Coco will automatically die if they try to play Cerberus. So there are some ways you can probably mess around with this cooldown to get it to soften the opponent board, so that when the next turn you can answer it a lot easier. So, well, is this worth a super evolve though? Maybe it's worth a super evolve just so you can get Izudia out safer. Like you play this on turn 7, you going into Izudia on turn 8, so your Izudia you don't take and you get punished as much as not removing every single follower using Izudia. So that's probably the idea behind these two. And then the rest of the cards aren't that particularly strong. Well, Eradicating Arrow will probably see play in some form of Roach deck. This card scales really poorly because it scales linearly with combo, which obviously makes it a lot better in Roach decks, especially on your combo turn, since this does bypass Aura actually. So if you're a Roach deck going into a Haven matchup, this is probably your one and only way of clearing out all those Aura wards that is going to be your way. So which is probably going to be really good in that scenario. But in any other case scenario, this is only it's going to be a lot worse than Ambush from Above. So this is only going to be run if you really want more copies of Ambush from Above, which from what I feel right now is probably not going to be the case. Hammer of the Undying is a 3 point. Discard 2 to discard a card to draw 2, and then you can nerf an enemy followed by giving it -0/-2. This one is honestly genuinely pretty insane actually. Forests love to generate quite a lot of excessive token spells, so you can even use this to discard breaks to just cycle through your deck. And it's not even useless. After that as well, a typical draw 2 cost 3 play point. I hope you remember that because that's going to be very relevant. And then going forward, you can even use it to remove one enemy follower that costs probably 2 or less. That is genuinely good value, as well as if you can even save it for like a Izudia turn to actually remove an additional follower that you like just desperately need to remove. Like this is genuinely a pretty good card, and you can use. Yeah, it's genuinely really flexible. It's one of the better options that Forest have received. A Great Wood Warrior, however, is pretty lackluster. It's 4/4/4 with standard stats, and it gives you another Deep Wood Bounty as well as a fairy. Just to remember what these are. Not in my opinion, not that great. It's a bit too heavy for Forest, especially Roach Forest. Roach Forest usually wants to do usually runs a lot of cheap cards so they can activate their various combos, right? Like maybe or either their Godwood Staff or their Lily. Great Wood Warrior is a little bit heavy and it just gets removed. It gets removed, but it's not that much of a threat in and of itself, although it does give you another Deep Wood Bounty. But particularly, I don't have the hots for this card. I don't think she's good enough. And like, there's so many better options in that you can run for Roach. I guess there's one scenario where you drop this the turn before Roach, so if she survives, you're not unhappy because you're not getting another Deep Wood Fairy. But in that case, you should play for. There's probably so many better ways to set up, so I don't see a use for this card. And there's also Devotee of Unkilling, which is probably the worst Unkilling card we've seen so far. This is basically just another version of Flaming Dragon Newt, but for Forest. I think there are better options you can be playing rather than this one card that only removes a 1/1 or even a 2/1. Like, there's genuinely better things you can be doing than this. So this is going to be one of the earliest things that to be cut if anything is from this deck. Then there's the other two bronzes. I haven't touched on them yet. I'll skip over Bestial Swipe because I just once again, Ambush is above. It's a draw a card if you combo 3 though, so not the worst maybe. Not the worst, but it's pretty generic. It is above average stats. So there may be some world where you want to run this, but it also does draw a card to replace itself, so it's not the worst thing ever. But it is kind of a tempo loss, so it's fine. However, Barrel of the Fairy Blade is probably one of the more interesting cards that I've seen yet. It doesn't support any go into any of these archetypes, but it is a 2/1/3, which is standard stats, and it does get buffed every time an allied Pixie follower enters the field. So every you play one Pixie follower, this becomes above average. You play 2, it gets amazing stats. You play 3, and this card already goes crazy. So if there's an aggro Pixie forest deck, this card is going to be run, and I honestly would run it too, because I genuinely think that her stat line is actually really good. And then along with the Pixie follower removing any enemy follower, this could potentially get in for a lot of damage. So this is one of the more interesting cards that are that's available this expansion. So in terms of the most impressive card, that most usable card for Forest so far, I think Cruel is in the top spot, followed by a Hammer of Unkilling. Then Barrel of the Fairy Blade will actually take that spot. And then, depending on your deck list, is either Eradicating Arrow or Supplicant of the Unkilling. And then the rest of the cards are basically too niche, and it's only run if you are already building into that archetype. So that's Forest done. Let's move on to Sword. So Sword is interesting in the sense that they got an entire new archetype this expansion, which is Loot Sword, which is focused around getting these token spells, these loot cards, and then fusing them into payoff cards like Sincero, or to fuel cards like that wants you to fuse like Octree's Crest to get Remnants of Hollowness, which is a deal 4 split between all enemies. Obvious combo, Sincero plus Octree's token spell is 7 play points to deal 12 potential damage to all enemies, which is pretty nuts. But let's take a look at some of the loot generation cards before we come back to Sincero. First off, Devotee of Usurpation, 2/1 that gives you 2 different loot cards, Boots as well as Goblet. Pretty good standard stats, and generally would be played even in mid-range Sword, because mid-range Sword lost 2/1s. This is, would it be better be overplayed over the Last Samurai or the Wandering Samurai? Probably not. It's going to be worse late game, a little bit worse, but it's honestly not the worst card that we have seen. It could be even a 3 play point 3/1 rush. Like, that's generally still good. On the other hand, the other loot card, the Supplicant of Usurpation, which generates a Gilded Necklace as well as a Gilded Blade, is honestly, in my opinion, a bit of a tempo loss. It is below average stat. It's Goblin stat for 2 play point, which is not what you want, especially in Sword where you really want to fight for tempo as well as board. So this one is below average in terms of that. Not that great. In fact, I see this card as being one of the first cards to be cut if the Loot Sword already has enough loot generation. Like, this one is probably the weakest loot generation card in my opinion. Then the next loot card that we have is Lair of Usurpation, which is an engage that adds 2 tokens to your hand, either the Gilded Blade and Necklace or Gilded Goblet and Gilded Boots. So basically, one of this, or well, not that, either it copies the effect of the Supplicant as well as the Devotee. So going off a blind guess, most likely in most lists I will expect Supplicant of the Usurpation to be cut completely, and then what happens is that you use a Devotee of the Usurpation to gain good Boots and Goblet, and then you use Lair of Usurpation to gain the Necklace as well as the Blade. The next card, Congregant of the Usurpation, is also the same as a Devotee, that he generates a Gilded Goblet and a Gilded Boots, and he's also a very incredible card, by the way, for 4 play point. This card is nuts, but I'll come back in a bit because I just want to go through the motions real quick. And Octree's here as Gilded Blade and Necklace. So in terms of accessibility, Gilded Blade and Necklace are one of the harder ones. One of them requires evolve to get, and the other one it requires playing a low tempo follower. So I will probably just get Gilded Boots as well as Gilded Goblet from the easier to and better stronger cards, Congregant as well as Devotee, and just use Lair of Usurpation to get the Blade and Necklace to fuel Sincero. Like, that looks to be the play to me, because other than that, it just doesn't seem worth it otherwise. But yes, moving on to Congregant, this card is absolutely insane. Not only does he give you 2 loot cards, every time you play or fuse a loot card, he deals 3 to an random enemy follower. Obviously, it really depends on what cards you have in your hand, but already at base, if you evolve this guy, this is a 4 play point, 5 play point, deal with 3 random enemy followers, and you get a Gilded Goblet. You get a heal 2 to your enemy, to your leader. And this is actually honestly very nuts. This can deal with quite a fair bit of bot. It's also random enemy followers, so it bypasses aura or ambush. Like, this card is crazy, and it's probably the best card that Sword has received this set, if any. But the other Luke Legend Go is also very competitive. Returning stage is a 1 play point due to a random enemy follower. If you fuse even 1 Luke card into this card, you basically refund yourself with a Gilded Blade, and then you also cycle through your deck. So 1 play point draw is nuts. 1 play point due to is already really good, and you even got additional archetype bonus to it. Like, this is just a really insane card all in all. Then we have Sincero Heir to Observation. We did talk about this during day 1 of the review. 656 deal, basically 8 air cap. Looking at some of the cards, that it does make sense that we do have a lot of loot generators, and it doesn't look like that it will be a good space. You'll probably be using the mid-range aspect of a spot to like fill in the gaps, to not use your loot so you can save your fuel for loot as fuel for Sincero. It looks to be the case, so I expect this to be played for cap of 8 damage every time. So this should obvious combo, I already mentioned it, is with Octree's Crest and Remnant. Octree's by herself is standard stats, by the way, 333, and she doesn't provide anything else. So other than that, she herself is a horrible turn. It's just a very mid turn 3 play, not horrible in any means, but very bad late game drop, because she doesn't have enhance or like her old self, or nor does she has any ways to like disrupt your opponent. So you really want to get this out early so you can get your Remnant early so you can combo with Sincero. So this deck definitely looks to be lacking late game closeout options other than Sincero into Sincero plus Octree, which is probably their best play, which is why they'll probably rely on some other mid-range sword cards that like Centaur Centurion or another version of Albert to close out games at the very end. But yes, that's what loot sword seems to be lacking at the moment. But other than that, the sword archetype seems pretty solid. We have good generators, and then we have some payoff cards that does require super evolve. The rest of the cards, bronzes, and as well as the Peppy Scout that Swordcraft got a pretty lackluster. Comrade of the Swordmaster is a take 2 card, to say the least. And Shield Bash is a huge tempo loss, which is why I don't think Sword will ever run it unless they try to pivot to a more spell focused Sword, which is like, why? I don't understand. So it doesn't make sense. And Peppy Scout here is a 5/3/3 that summons a random Swordcraft follow that costs 3 or less. Few things, it's not guaranteed that you'll get a 3 drop. So if you run 2 drops, it ruins the pool. Your 3 drops needs to be impactful, otherwise it's not going to do anything. Peppy Scout herself is a 5/3/3 without any keywords. So if you evolve her, you can only clear 1 enemy follower. So like that's like below average stats already. Like a typical 5 drop, right? Or even something you play on 5 should be cleared. She should be clearing 2 with an evolve, like minimum, if you want it to be good. Like Congregant of Usurpation, for example. But Peppy Scout here only clears 1 with an evolve, so that's like very low value. I mean, you do get another allied follower, but it's like your ING is gonna be an ass, and I don't know what's up. The best one you can probably pull is like what? Princess Rose, Kagemitsu. And then anything else, right, you lose the fanfare effect, so it's like innate anti-synergy. So this is probably a take 2 card that you probably won't even pick in take 2. So yeah, that's the rest of the sword cards. Overall, Sword's identity very strong. Very weak in any of the cards I put in the late game though. So that is probably the one weakness of Sword right now. But you have to draw your key card combo cards early, so like Hard Mulligan early. But overall, the concept is solid, so definitely we'll see play. Will it be strong? I won't be real though. This Sincero package, right? All the cards they play, are very capped by damage. So like they don't have a solid way of ending the game. So if your opponent runs even one form of heal, any form of healing, right, and some form of ward defensive options, the loot will actually fall short and will not be able to close out games. That's what I'm seeing right now. So they are really lacking ways in closing out games, but other than that, the identity is really solid. Now moving on to Runecraft is a really weird one in which I don't know what they're trying to go for at all. So first off, the key boss card Ryo Elimination and Manifest reduces cost of all follows in your deck by 3 and transform a random spell in your hand into a bot clear that increases the cost of all follows in your hand by 1 to destroy all enemy followers. This bot spell wipe is crazy, by the way. And his main body is 999, very heavy. Obviously, you meant to drop this at the very end of the game, and then you prepare for a blowout turn very soon. After all your followers in your deck is reduced by 3, which is crazy. But it's not the greatest, but it is a very crazy effect to have. Like reducing so many cards in your deck to probably potentially 0 or even like cheap, like 2 or 3 play points for like a 7 play point card. That's for a 3 play point card, 6 play point card. Like that, there's some in the same bowl of potential here, but it's a very slow card in payoff. And to support him, we have some questionable cards. I would say, starting with Devotee of Truth 2/2 that restores 3 defense if his cast is a 2. You'll see there's more cost manipulation cards in a minute. Supplicants of the Truth 5/3/2. Water Break. New 3 to all other followers, and if isn't 5, you draw 2 cards. So it's a board wipe basically on 5, and if you change his cost, you get to draw 2 cards in the process. Congregant of the Truth 3/3/1. If it's cost isn't 3, you summon 2 exact copies. So any buffs that is on Congregant of the Truth, you will go be on the as copies as well. And if you super evolve it, you get another exact copy. So far, Supplicant of the Truth is pretty solid. It does board wipe at 5, which is fine. And if it isn't 5, you get an additional draw 2, which is a neat bonus. Congregant of the Truth is a 3/3/1, which is fine. But if it isn't 3, so you get 2 additional copies, which turn this into a sword card basically. A 3 play point, like 9/3 is insane sets. And if you super evolve it, you get another copy, which will make this like what? 4 copies with super evolve, and then another 2/3/1 copies if you can manipulate it. And with Ryo, right, this becomes 0, Supplicants becomes 2, and even draws 2. Like that's crazy. And Valharia, which is the most questionable card in this entire set, she's a draw 1. Just a draw 1. Nothing, just a draw 1. I don't know about this card. This card is weird, and I don't get it. Like, this is... I don't understand. I mean, okay, and you may be asking, how are you going to manipulate the cost such that they undo? Well, guess what? Side games actually have a conscience for once. They are not reducing the cost, but they are actually increasing the cost this time. In exchange for some payoff cards. For example, one of the cards, Institute of Truth, will increase the cost by 1 to give it +1/+1. And whenever you play a follower whose cost has been changed, you draw a card and advance this card's countdown by 1. So the best thing I assume will be Institute of Truth on 3 into Congregant of Truth on 4, which will summon 3 4/2 copies of Congregant of Truth, and that is a pretty good swing turn if I were to say so myself. And then you play Supplicant of Truth on 5 into a buff Supplicant of Truth on 6, and you know, although the idea is there. Once again, no good way of blowing out the game with the current Rune package. So far, so they'll probably be relying on something else, like probably Cocytus again. Illusory Configuration is also a spell that destroys a random enemy follower to increase the cost of one follower by hand. You will probably run this just to be able to destroy a random enemy follower. I feel like that is pretty much worth it. And this downside isn't that bad considering some of the cards that you're running alongside here that once they're cost to be changed. So you're probably okay with that. Except for Valharia. Valharia is... Why? So the idea of that of the elimination truth package is there, but like I have no idea where their win con is going or what they're aiming for. If anything, I feel like this could probably slot into a loop, Earth-like package, like play along the Earth-like cards where they have plenty of bot presence, so you could use this alongside them to close out games. So it is not impossible. That is probably what you are most likely to do actually. But that's enough about the true package. Let's take a look at some of the filler cards. First up, Risky Amalgamations, 4 play points, summon a Clay Golem and a Guardian Golem, which is 5/5 in stats for 4 play point. Is equivalent to a fighter but split into 2 body, which make it decent, but like there's probably better things you can do on turn 4 other than summoning 2 guys. Probably, yeah. Yeah, can this answer Zirconia? No, it cannot. Therefore, this is mid at best. It's very mid card, but it's an option if you need followers desperately. Aesthetic of Wu-Xing is a 4/3/3 that summons a Paper Shikigami. It's 4/5/1/5/4 instead, which is below average, but the Paper Shikigami does have rush. And if you evolve this, you get another one, so you can probably spell Boost 2 for the cost of 4, which is pretty bad. But once again, if you're playing a follower base that wants to spell boost and not play spells for some reason, I guess you can run Aesthetic of Wu-Xing as a one-off, but you don't want to run too many of him because you will really break if that's the case. Like, if you play 4 play point to spell boost only one time, get out. What are you trying to do? Like, just play proper spell boost like a normal person. But okay, here's one of the more interesting bronze for Rune right now, Crystal Gazing, or I like to call it Glazing. It is a 4 play point spell that gives you a crest that draws 2 and deals 4 to all enemy followers. This card is incredibly interesting because it's a preemptive card that forces your opponent to play suboptimally in case unless they want to play into this deal 4 effect. This is a very interesting card with mind game potential, and in which case I really like it. But even then, you will probably not more play than one of these because drawing 2 of these makes you want to cry and throw yourself out the window. But very interesting card. Is probably one of the better cards that Rune has received in terms of in order, right? The best card that Rune has received so far: Congregant of Truth, Illusory Conjuration, Crystal Gazing, and Supplicant of Truth in that order. The rest of the cards are pretty questionable. Valharia, especially being a 2/1 one that just draw a card despite being a legendary heir, like this could be a bronze effect and no one will bat an eye. But like these 4 cards here are probably the best cards that Rune has achieved this expansion, which is a good thing because that means Spell Boost wouldn't be gay. Like, Spell Boost is not gonna be changed, but at least it's not a Spell Boost buff. Thank God. Except maybe Illusory Conjugation. Spell Boost might want to run this, but honestly, pretty good. Has their identity, missing a solid win con, which is probably end up gonna be Cositus anyways. So let's quickly move on. Next up, Dragoncraft, we have the Disdain package. First up, the Face, Gaunmute's Other Manifest, 5/5/5 that is enhanced 7 get Storm. I talked about this card before and I think she's an enabler and I still stand by that opinion. The 0 play point card can be used to activate some of your other cards like Congregant, Supplicant, as well as Devotee, and we will talk about them in a quick moment. So even as of now, I still think she haven't changed. She's still my opinion of her is still that she's an enabler and not a win condition for the deck. Next, and let's take a look at some of the support cards. Devotee of the Disdain is a 2/2/2 that draws a Dragon card follower isn't destroyed, which is fine, is decent. It trades into a 1-drop to get value, but if a 2-drop, you don't drop this, you wait until turn 3 to play alongside a card like probably Ferocious Flame, reducing 1 damage to deal 3 to a random enemy follower. This card is pretty good. If you're in Overflow, you get an additional benefit. It's a bit slow because it doesn't replace itself immediately, but with Devotee of the Disdain, you'll probably find with that to remove 1 follower and still get value out of that. Supplicant of the Disdain is a 5/3/5 rush reward. Doesn't have any offensive abilities, but it does fully restore the defense of this follower and restore the same amount to your leader, which is crazy in a sense, because if this card has taken 6 damage and it survives with 1 hit point, you heal 6 at the end of the turn, and this goes back to max hit points. This is a crazy card in a bot based deck and for a bot based meta, but only in a bot based meta. If the meta is too fast or is very aggressive, okay, you will probably run this, but if it's very slow on the other hand, right, maybe this supplicant will probably be one of the first cards to be cut from the current package. The next one, Congregant of Disdain, is a 6/5/7, really good stats, but it deals 3 to all followers, so this will be dropped down to a 5/4, which is still fine because this is a bot wipe. Like, it's a pretty good stats, but the key thing is at the end of your turn, if this follower's defense is 3 or less, all Dragoncraft followers in your hand gets +1/+1. This is a hand buff effect for all followers in his hand, so it makes all your storm cards a lot more potent. It makes your cheap cards a lot more potent because they are now bigger. Is that good enough? Maybe, because it is you already achieved what you want by dealing 3 to all followers, so you already got bot wipe. And then if you buff all your cards in your hand, you're actually making it more likely that you can finish off your opponent with cards that blow out like Galbukes, for example, which is good enough, frankly good enough. And then the other legendary Azurite Heir to Disdain is a 9.57 that does 2 damage to all enemy followers 3 times, so this can bypass cards with barrier and then still deal 4 after all of that, which is a really strong bot wipe too. It is all followers though, so it does leave Azurite Ifrit on 1 hit point. That was also my train of thought, but right, it does leave it at 1 hit point, but on Super Evolve you can fully restore the defense of this follower and do it 3 times. You can do 6 damage to all followers again. Essentially, you can do 12 damage to the entire bot with a Super Evolve. And the good thing is that if you Super Evolve this card do not take damage anymore. Well, it still takes damage, but the damage is reduced to 0. So if essentially after you Super Evolve, this becomes an 8/10 ward, which is really crazy and a very probably not that hard to remove, honestly. But once you play it, you're already really happy because during your turn, whenever this follower takes damage but isn't destroyed, you deal 1 damage to the enemy leader. So with this effect, you already hurt this follower 6 times, so this ends up doing 6 damage to the enemy leader, which is basically a third of their health. And that is honestly, in my opinion, quite worth it, especially if you're going to breach into a turn, like next turn you're going to go into the Genesis Dragon, for example. Like, that's what I would think. Like, this card is pretty nuts. Okay, looking at some of the other silvers, Nation of Disdain is a 2 play point countdown 4 that deals 1 damage to all followers on engage 1. It's okay. It's not interesting. You still need to play 1 play point for this, and like looking at the current cards, right? You're already running out of curve already. So if you're playing this, you're best case only activating this twice, which isn't a good value actually. It's 4 play point, do 1 twice. It's not good. It's not worth it. This amulet is pretty bad. It does have synergy with cards like Devotee, obviously, but like, and it does enemy bot wipe. So if they are playing aggro, you will use this. But in terms of value, this card is really very bad. But you will probably run it if you really need some early game bot wipes, which I think Dragoncraft kinda needs. Looking at the other Silver Ocean Rider, this card is crazy, by the way. First off, it's standard stats 333 total, but this time Mega Locker has Rush, so you can use it to run into an enemy follower, and if you're in Overflow, you can summon an additional one, so making it a 355 in stats in Overflow, which is even better. Not only that, when Marine followers enter the field, it gets ward. So it's just to make it even better on top of that, of being good already. Like, this silver is crazy. You will run it everywhere, especially with Neptune around, so that in fact this becomes a heal 2 as well once you're in Overflow. Like, this card goes crazy in synergy with like cards like Neptune. So this is a very strong card. And lastly, we have our last 2 bronzes for Dragoncraft. Snowstorm Dragon New is a 666 that destroys all damage enemy followers. It's too heavy, it doesn't do anything else. is not worth the running, so it's a very bad card, take 2. And Raging Lightning is funny because this card deals 5 damage to all enemy follows with the highest defense, which could potentially wipe bots. But the second part, if you're in Overflow, you deal 3 damage to all leaders with the highest defense. This effect is unplayable because 1, if you're winning against your opponent and you play this card, you take the 3 damage because no way you have less hit point than your opponent if you're winning. However, on the flip side, if you're losing, you will not play this card because you do 3 damage to yourself because there's no way your opponent will be lower health than you if you're losing. This card is questionable at best, but it is probably something you run if you have no better option. Like it is deal 5 after for 3, like, which is pretty good, but like you'll never play this for the overflow effect. And that is it for Dragon. Very solid class identity, very good synergy as well between Congregant as well as the higher end card, but similarly lacks low-out cards. It does have damage in terms of Galmux into Azure Ifrit, which is probably 7 plus 6, 13 total. If you play another Azure Ifrit, you're also close to winning the game. So maybe a Galmux into Azure Ifrit is what is the play that you are going for, which is, you know what, good enough, fair enough, and I think that is perfectly neat. I do feel like Dragon might want to run like 1 or 2 extra win conditions though, just in case they don't draw into these cards, like maybe Forte, cards like Genesis Dragon to close out games. But you can definitely see the package does overall looks really, really good, and it's probably one of the better ones I've seen so far alongside Swordcraft. Next up, we have Abyss, and well, it was the class I was most interested in, but we'll see whether it has changed in any way, shape, or form with the new silvers and golds. But basically, I think most of the cards are already revealed anyways beforehand. So, well, let's quickly go through them. First up, we have our core card, Shamnasha. I call her Nachos. She is a kind of nachos, my business, but she's a 2/2/2 that gives you a faith which increases by 1 whenever you select a mode. And when you have 10 faith, you can remove all the 10 of the counters to increase the number of modes we can select by 1. And on Super Evolve, she selects an enemy follower on the field to destroy it to add a copy of it to your hand. Honestly, to be fair, the most interesting bit about her that I find is the Super Evolve. Like, stealing cards from another class is probably my favorite mechanic ever, but I won't delve too much into that because I don't think this comes out enough times for it to be relevant. But on paper, she's just a 2/2/2 do nothing. So like, that isn't good. You probably run like 1 or 2 copies of this, or maybe even 3 if you really want to guarantee that you can get the fanfare on time. But any more than 2 copies of her is probably not worth it, frankly, to say the least, since she herself doesn't even have a mode, which is kind of curious. You would have thought they would give her a mode, but I guess not. But yes, with that in mind, let's take a look at some of the cards that Mode Abyss will be receiving this patch. First up, with Devotee of Entwining. This card is an incredible card because I think my first impression of this wasn't great because I saw it as a 3/1/1 but turns out it could either be a 3/3/3 with the +2/+2, or it could be a Apollo, which is a 3 damage deal 1 ink archetype as well, so it contributes to the mode quest, and also you have the ability to just give it more stats. Well, and then if on the next turn, if it's your evolve turn, you could evolve it again to get even more stats, and it could end up being a 3/7/7, for example, and that is a lot of stats for a 3-drop to have, especially going to evolve turn. This could go potentially spiral out of control very, very fast and really, really easily. So obviously, by default is really good, and it already supports in the ink archetype place of Mode Abyss, so there's generally no downsides for this card, and it only gets better once you get the faith active. Going with the next Entwining card, Supplicant of Entwining, a 4/4/4 that deals 3 damage to a random enemy or heal 2 to the leader. Whenever you play these cards, I feel like for the first time you always choose the deal 3 to the random enemy follower. This is by default. You want to remove a single follower with Supplicant. If you remember, I was saying about my benchmarks, a 4-drop or 5-drop should usually remove 1 to 2 followers with a without evolve, and if you can evolve it, you can remove up to 3, and this one can indeed do that if you select this deal damage a random enemy follower twice. So in which case this makes this a perfectly solid card. It could potentially contend with like in Zirconia with like a plus minus with a bit of luck. So definitely not a bad card by any means, and I think you would probably run it just to get the modes done. Like it is honestly a pretty standard card overall. Next support card, Castle of Entwining, a 2 play point amulet that draws a card on fanfare, or you could give of allied follower +1/+1. +1/+1 is not really relevant unless you want to trade into enemy follower, or even trade up into a bigger follower. But most of all, no, I think you will use this for the draw to 2 play point draw 1. Which isn't good, by the way. 2 play point draw 1 is horrible, but this makes up for it because you can engage one to replicate this card's fanfare ability to draw another card, making this a 3 play point draw 2, which is standard. Standard draw is fine, but it's usually standard draw usually gets replaced really early on for something else. But the benefit of this is that this contributes to the faith, but if this mode that isn't used, then Castle of Entwining wouldn't be run. Then first, go follower, the Congregant of Entwining is a 5/4/4 that has a variety of mode to choose from. You can either get rush followers or ward follower, or you give all allied copies +2/+2. Simply put, you're never choosing the third one until the unless you already got the faith active. But simply put, rush is the best keyword here, obviously, but against certain decks you might decide to go for ward, especially if they are more aggressive. 8 worth of sword, especially if you evolve this, becomes a 10 worth of stats with ward, is pretty annoying to deal with for most classes, as well as especially aggro decks. And you get to repeat this ability on super evolve, not evolve, so it's comparatively a lot more balanced. But I don't think you will ever want to super evolve this because it's not exact copies. So even if you super evolve, if you choose it differently, right, you can only get either 1 rush, 1 ward, and 2 rush and 2 wards. Like not 2 rush, 2 wards, one of the overlapping, of course, one of them is being overlapped with a rush and ward. Or you can get like 3 rushes, 3 wards, but you can't get 3 wards or 3 rushes. So that's the one minor problem. I guess honestly the best thing that can happen, right, is you get like what? With the faith active, you can get 4 4s that big buff into either 6/6 or 8/8s. Like that's pretty good. That's pretty nuts. But of course, you need the mode to be active. This one, you need a mode to be active for this to be to get that sort of bot. But even with that potential, it kind of is quite slow in the middle game, I would suppose. Well, is it 2 wards? What? No, it's fine. It's fine, but it's slow because it doesn't help generate faith efficiently like some of the other cards, which is, I believe, 2 faith per card. This one is only 1, so it's definitely slow. You want to save this for after post Sham Nachos if possible. Next, Golgard, Screaming and Loading, really good card, but well, there was a but I'll get to that later. It's a 3 play point with 4 modes that you get to select 2 from, so this should contribute 2 mode to the Nachos faith. You can either recover 1 play point, draw a follower, draw a 3-cost spell, or deal 4 to a random enemy follower. All of them are very default. Tutoring a follower is about 2 play points. Tutoring a specific spell is 2 play points. And as of now, I don't think Abyss runs any other version of 3 play point spell, so this is an exclusive tutor for Screaming and Loading. And dealing 4 to a random enemy follower is worth about 2 play points. So if you recover 1 play point and you choose one of these other effects, you're basically paying for like a standard card, which is okay, I guess. But it does play into faith, so that is a positive. Honestly, I don't know if this should have been recover 2 play point and you just absolutely break this, because you could probably go like recover 2 into a draw a follower for 1 play point, draw a follower, which is actually crazy. It actually goes crazy if you do that, but thankfully they didn't. So this is at least somewhat balanced by the fact that this is 2 to tutor a specific card. You could go Screaming into another Screaming, which is a totally valid play, and you can thin your deck a lot and also generates a lot of mode for Sham Nachos as well. So this is a really good card for this archetype, really strong, but it's only strong because it contributes to faith, but individual card strength is actually not. Is actually just fine. Last but not least, we have the other legendary Rune and Vulneric on you. Yuri on the block. Well, not Yuri anymore. Rune is a guy. So roommates, hubbies. I don't know. Right behind you, Vulneric or something. I don't know. Well, I messed up that line, but you get what I'm going for. Are you ready, Rune? Right behind you, Vulneric or something. Yes, but enough jesting. Rune and Vulneric is a 7.55 that allows you to get either one of these token spells, Scream Diffusion or Wings of Desire. Wings of Desire gives a follower Storm, and Scream Diffusion summons another 2 copies and gives them Rush. Pre Sham Nachos, you want to, I think Scream Diffusion is always the pick. Like getting 15 words of stats is just incredible, and then being Rush, and you can evolve one to get another 7 damage in. This is pretty good, and considering that it doesn't even need a evolve point. And then the other one is Wings of Desire. I think is only ever picked up post Nachos when you're already stabilizing and every card of yours is basically a value engine. Before that, I feel like more Abyss really need to stabilize, and which is why Scream Diffusion is the better card. I'm not gonna lie though, I'm a bit disappointed in this Rune and Vulneric because I expected something more unique that ties into their screaming as well as their loading aspects. Back when in SV1, Runeni's key, one of the key traits of Runeni was that he interferes with the opposing board. Like one of them was that he reduces attack of rush follows, for example, and Vulneric does a lot of ping damage as well as board wipe in terms of aggression. So the Wings of Desire does play into Vulneric's part. However, Scream Diffusion doesn't actually play quite well into Rune, except for the fact that it summons 2 additional copies, which honestly is just boring because it's just bodies on the board. But yes, that's more Abyss as of now. Funnily enough, although this card is strong, I don't see you running more than 2 copies because if you draw 3 copies of Rune and Vulneric, it's actually really, really bricky, and it only contributes 1 to Sham Nachos as well. So this is definitely a payoff card and not something that you use to build towards Sham Nachos. So Mo Abyss looks pretty good. It's solid, but I think it has a pretty good grind game that aims to like chip your opponent down. So with that in mind, this is actually a really solid package, and one of the probably stronger is probably stronger than Dragon in a way. Well, definitely not offensively, but defensively it is. But let's take a look at the archetype filler cards. We have first Ephemeral Demon Princess is an 8/4/6 with Storm that destroys 2 enemy followers and deal 4 to your leader. It's a take 2 card and it is unplayable in rotation because what the hell do you want to do 4 damage to yourself? Okay, no, that's a bad way to put it. That's a war where you want to do 4 damage to yourself, but why would you not want to run Odin instead? Or even further down, why would you not rather just run the who was that? There was a lady from the set 1 which is a 3/6 Storm with Bane. Like that's cost 6 play point. That's like infinitely better than this. It's not infinitely better, but this one can remove 2 wards, but like I feel like you could just go to get it out early and ignore the ward in the first place if you really, really want to. I guess there's a war where this is played, but like I don't see it. It feels like a take 2 card. It's too heavy for it. It's too heavy for it to actually be good. So yeah. And then next you have March of the Brutes, which is a 4 play point due to 2 random enemy followers and the enemy leader. The problem I have with this card is that it only removes 2 drops. It doesn't remove 3 drops or 4 drops. So this is actually very bad tempo loss unless you're specifically up against another aggro deck. The 2 damage to the leader is good, but you're really losing tempo because of this card. It's not a follower, so it's not worth it. And I feel like there's better things you can be playing on turn 4 rather than remove 2 play point cards. Let's be real. Like this not even worth running for that? And last but not least, we have Spirited Grave Quicker. It's a 2/2/2 vanilla, but I have enhanced 7 to reanimate 5 and reanimate 3. Obviously, the targets for this seems to be Sharon as well as Rotting Zombie, both of which are pretty good cards by itself, but the fact that if you reanimate Sharon, I'm pretty sure she gives herself ward. So she becomes a target as well, which makes this card slightly worse. She's also she's okay early game, but she does nothing, so I don't really like her. Only good in the late, probably not worth it in the slightest. Like you need a little bit more value out of this rather than just reanimating 1 Sharon and one Rotting Zombie. But Yeah, there's probably better things to do. Like, it doesn't answer the opponent's board, which is the most important thing. Especially turn 6, turn 7 boards are very, very potent. So if you fail to answer any of them, you're going to take a lot of damage. It's not good to pass a turn. It's not good to leave a turn 7 or even turn 6 board up alive. And if you play Spirited Gravekeeper, it is very likely that something is going to be left alive. Or at least 2 things, because this even remove a follower. So this card is pretty bad, but depending on what reanimate 5 we get in the future, it might change. So yes, overall, Mo Abyss looks really good. Rune and Vulnerate, very boring, probably not a 3 off, but it is okay as of now. It looks pretty good and solid, so probably the best I've seen so far. So moving on, Havencraft, my despised. Oh, okay, let's get started. First of all, let's look at the core cards. Merylwyn, this is probably the core for Havencraft this expansion, especially his crest that if allied followers didn't attack this turn, deal X damage to all enemies, split amongst all enemies, X equals the number of crests you have. I feel like this obviously can go phase, but I feel like this is most importantly used as a board clear. Being dealing 4 or even 5 at the end of your turn looks to be the goal of this deck. 3 is fine but not ideal, 2 is bad, 1 is horrible. But at the minimum, this does do 1. Note that you don't have to activate this crest, you can still trade in with your follower if it's not worth it. So, obviously this clears 1 is already below average. His token spell torrent of despair is really, really strong, and it makes my favorite card unplayable, which is why I hate this card so much. It banishes a random enemy follower, and it does increase the... It does delay the count of all your crests, so it makes them stick around for a lot longer. So this has synergy with some of the other cards that I introduced this expansion, obviously. And since it banishes a random enemy follower, it bypasses aura, and in that case, it makes Liliantine absolutely unplayable and Earthright absolutely dead archetype, unless they win with Norman somehow. I am upset, yes. So, the other card, Himika Heir to the Repose, is a store card that also has synergy with Crest. She gives you a Crest on Fanfare, and that Crest locks 4 X random enemy followers with 4 or less attack, and it banishes them at the end of your opponent's turn. X equals to the number of Crests you have, so the more Crests you have, the more followers she can completely lock and remove with basically no effect, because the enemy doesn't, unless they destroy them themselves, cannot actually get their last words from it. The banish is really strong in that sense that you can remove quite a lot of value with this card. So how much do you have to remove with Himika to actually be good? Considering how it looks, you just need to remove at least 3 followers minimum, lock 3 followers minimum, and I think you could probably call it an equivalent trade-off with Himika. And if you have a super evolve, you can even hit any higher value targets as well. Those with higher attacks that would normally be out of Himika's range. Okay, also I just want to mention how Merylwyn works, because this is a split effect. It does go from oldest follower to the newest follower, so it will if anything is old, right, it will always split in that fashion. So this is probably a very good thing to keep in mind. And Himika here is fine. It's a store card. It's annoying. I hate it, but as of now doesn't feel good enough. But we will have to look at some of the other repose cards to be certain. So starting with our first repose card, we have Devotee of the Repose, which is a 2/04 that gives you a Crest on Fanfare, which probably synergizes well with our guys already. They don't want to attack after. Looks like they don't want to attack. It gives a follower, allied follower -2/-0, and what if our followers didn't attack? So there's synergy with Merylwyn, there's synergy with Himika. I'm pretty sure does Himika need to not attack? Never mind, Himika doesn't need to not attack. Himika can attack, but you can give her warp using this effect, which makes her a little bit more annoying to deal with. And with the Crest, you can also play into Himika with a Merylwyn and a Himika and a Devotee of Repose. You can lock 3 followers, which is exactly the number we want for it. We say that she will slightly become playable. So this card will probably be run, and it's probably really annoying because his stat line is incredibly high for a 2-drop. It's a 0/4 after all. Well, it doesn't trade off any followers though. That's the main one downside about him. But maybe you don't care about that, considering that by the time you get around to play him, your Marine should be active, and Marine should be the one that's clearing the board for you. Next up is Supplicant of the Repose 314, also a Crest of Fanfare, and this time this crest heals the leader for 1 whenever allied followers leader attack. Also has what's very annoying stat line, a 314. It can block off at least two drops. Obviously the attack is a lot low, but is a very annoying card that the aggro has to get over if they want to hit your face. And probably supplies the reference on Fanfare, obviously, so it probably would see play. And lastly, we have Congregant of the Repose, which destroys the enemy follower on play, which is fine. And on evolve, you get another crest that draws a follower with 4 defense. So you could basically it's an in-archetype tutor for any other Repose card. This effect isn't that good because it's not specific enough, and it can guarantee your payoff cards like Hibika or Merowin. But well, actually, I guess you can if you just run 1 copy of each, don't you? 1 copy of Devotee, 1 copy of Supplicant just for the crest, and then you just run Congregant to draw the payoff cards. I guess that's something you can do. But why would you do that? I don't know. I don't know why you would do that. But that's fine. There's overall archetype looks is tying together, but there's no clear win condition on what their goal angle is, other than annoying the hell out of your opponent, which is what Haven does. So it's really questionable what they're trying to accomplish. But besides from that, let's take a look at some of the other Haven cards that Haven has received. First of all, Knight of the Holy Order is a 2/2 ward that restores 1 health defense to your leader whenever it's buffed. So cards like Wilbur as well as Ether this card will be a solid slot into Ward Haven as an additional support and heal. That's really good. Blinding Faith is a deal 3 to all enemy followers. This card is actually crazy good because it basically solves Haven's biggest issue of early board removal. One of the Haven's best source of board wipe in the early game is actually Salifa, which comes out on turn 5. And turn 5 makes Salifa barely good enough. If Salifa comes out even 1 turn later, she will become unplayable. This card, however, comes out 1 turn earlier, and that's a very important turn for aggro decks to take advantage of and to basically hit face for as much damage as possible before Haven stabilizes. And because this comes out on turn 4, it basically shuts down any chances that aggro deck has of winning the game. Essentially, unless they have more burn in hand. So this card is really strong, like ridiculously strong, and not even talking about the enhance, which is a draw 3 heal 3, which honestly isn't relevant at all in the slightest. We got 3 amulets from Haven. One of them is the Temple of Repose, and this is a very unique effect, and it's also really strong because it gives restore 2 defense to your leader. It's a heal, and it also gives your leader barrier, basically block 1 instance of damage. This stops OTKs from example like Izudia, which is dead before it even hits the field running, and also stops high damage cards like Albert, for example, which now maximum can do only 6 damage provided you don't have another follower on the field. Otherwise, it's you still take 6 damage actually, but funnily enough, we reduce the damage from Albert from like 12 to 6, which is like huge, by the way. This makes it so much more difficult for Swordcraft to actually close out games, especially just as an example, and it also makes it a more difficult for classes like Rune that relies on like Corsighton's decline to close out games, because now you have a barrier that basically buys you 1 turn. This buys you 1 turn against most OTKs. And obviously we don't talk about the engage accelerate this by the number of crests you have, but honestly that doesn't really matter. It's just a little bit awkward to play at 3, but for the trade-off is so strong, I think you wouldn't mind playing this regardless anyways. Next up is Winged Lion Holy Statue, with a 3 play point card that summons a Holy Falcon as well as a Holy Tiger with countdown 3, and it advances its count by 1 whenever you engage it. This is really solid value, but this does pop on turn 6. It does synergize with Wilbur, especially if you can get to pop on the same turn as well your Wilbur turn, which makes this a really good stat stick. But other than that, it does come out a little bit slow. 4 attack on turn 6 is actually really bad. On turn 6, you want more than just 4 attack already. I mean, you do get 6 total, but you kind of want to send Holy Falcon face, don't you? So I did look realistically, only Holy Flame Tiger is trading in, and with another card you're playing on the turn 6, you could probably establish board quite easily. So this is actually a pretty solid card and really strong going into the new expansion. And last but not least, we have Shining Disenchantment. This is a 4 play point countdown 4 that deals 4 to split between all enemies and also restore 4 defense to your leader. The value for this card is horrible, I'll be real. I wouldn't pay 4 play points for this effect, especially after I have to wait this long. This feels like a 3 play point card to me. I don't know why the devs decide to put it as a 4 play point card, because it's kind of really awkward. But I guess at the worst case scenario, it can still be a deal 4 if you can plan out your turn good enough. It's really awkward to play though, so I'm feeling this probably wouldn't see play, but it couldn't even be cheated out by Rodeo, unlike the other 2 amulets which can. I don't even think you have a turn 4 to set this out, can you? Turn 2, turn 3, turn 4, turn 5. Turn 4 you clash with Blinding Faith as well. Turn 5 you clash with Salifa. And then I don't know. I'm pretty certain you don't have time to get Shining Disenchantment in. Like, this card is way too expensive it's way too bricky at turn 4, and it doesn't have any immediate impact, so you will most likely lose the game if you play these 2 carelessly. Of course, it does heal 4, so you can survive long enough. You do actually probably pay back a little bit, but turn 4 is also when your evolve points get active, so a lot of cards can evolve down and you take a lot more damage you take a lot more damage from playing this than you actually heal. So it's probably not worth it in the slightest, to be in all of honesty. So overall, let's go through the Haven cards one more time. It looks pretty solid. No, it's solid in the way that the archetypes is there, but there's a clear lack of win condition. And I don't know what they're aiming for. But there are some very solid pack fillers like Temple of Repose, Wing Lion Statue, as well as a Blinding Faith that Haven can utilize going forward. So yes, that's the Haven cards in general. Definitely not strong, but it is gonna be annoying. Very annoying. In fact, game tilting annoying. But let's move on to Portal, which is the other class I'm particularly interested in. They do have in archetype. They do have an archetype out surrounding, I believe, puppets, as well as the new egg portal that is we'll see from Lishana, which is the main supporting card. Obviously, her stats are pretty standard, 2-4, actually below standard actually. A usual 4 drop will have 2 extra attack being a 4-4, but because of her token amulets and token spell, it actually makes sense. Let's take a look at what they are. First up, Melodious Melody is a 1 play point deal 4 to a random enemy follower to destroy allied card. Well, that's pretty good, but you do need a pair allied card for that, but that is not a big issue because of the evolve effect of this Shanna. We summons a white sound, which is basically an amulet that summons a black sound and heals 1, and black sound is the pink one that summons a white sound. This is infinite fuel for cell destruction effect, which is what Melody wants. Shanna is not the only card that destroys your own cards. We also have cards like Devotee of Destruction, which gains stats based on the other allied cards on the field, which is fine. You want at least 3 cards to make this good, like a 7/7 plus an Evolve makes this a 9/9 and makes it very annoying to deal with, and very dangerous cards at that. So 3 I think is the sweet spot to make this go nuts. Supplicant of Destruction, which destroys an allied card to deal 2 to a random enemy follower. Also, you can use the egg to fuel this. Congregant of Destruction, which destroy X random enemy followers equals to the other allied cards on the field. So if you have 2 cards on the field, it destroys 2. You have 3, it destroys 3. If you can destroy 2 is the sweet spot that makes this good. 1 is a little bit underpowered. 3 is absolutely overpowered. So this gets more the more cards you have on the field. And last but not least, we have the last supporting card, which is Devastating Soprano, which is a 2 play point spell that summons a white sound in exchange for an allied card on the field, which is incredible value because now you can get this out earlier to get some of your earlier destruction to fuel some of your early destruction effects. Not only that, we do have a Pot of Greed, basically a 2 play on draw 2 for Portal, but in the exchange you do need to sacrifice an allied card, which once again, White Sound and Black Sound are fuels. And it also draws a card on Last Word. You can destroy it yourself. no, you can draw. No, you can destroy yourself, but you can destroy using the amulet's effects. But you can use it to fuel the effects of other destruction cards on the field. And this is incredibly strong because it's a 2 play point draw 3. Usually the standard is 3 play point for a draw 2 and 4 play point for a draw 3. So you essentially cheat 3 mana. 2 mana for playing this card. You get so much value out of this card, and this card is honestly incredible. Well, I mean, you do have to sacrifice a card to draw 2, but like once again, just use white sum or black sum, or eventually I haven't touched about it, the puppets that you do get from like some of the puppet cards that we received in set 1. Last but not least, we have Axia, Heir to the Destruction. It's a ward that cannot be destroyed by abilities. So this card can also be used as fuel for all the other devotees of destruction, because they will still be counted as an allied card for their effect, but she will not be destroyed by their effects. Basically, just giving you a extra stat or extra destroy or extra value through Supplicants of Destruction, or even the extra egg for free. Basically, it's nuts. It supports really, really well. And on Super Evolve, you do X damage to the enemy leader. I guess the best case scenario is now that you can do like 7 damage per Super Evolve, which is pretty good considering that Black Psalm is an egg that constantly pings for 1 every other turn. And with all these destruction effects, you will keep flipping back and forth. And if it's a consistent, persistent effect that will eventually grind out your opponent and forces them to play at a highest skill level that they can actually play at. Otherwise, they will actually honestly lose the game if they are not careful enough. You can end the game with Axia especially. So, honestly, Archetype looks honestly insane. There's a lot of innate synergy within this class that I'm actually starting to get afraid of. It looks super solid. Of course, it's really dependent on how many eggs you can get onto the field. I feel like if you can get 2 eggs, you are in a very happy spot. 2 eggs, and it makes all of these cards like really, really strong on average, and you even get the consistent heal and ping every single turn. Like this egg amulet portal might actually be a thing. But let's take a look at some of the filler cards. First up, Supersonic Fighter 733 that summons a Gamma and give it +3/+3. It sucks. It's a take 2 card, and you'll never draft it in rotation. Wire Assault is a 4 play point, destroy an enemy follower, which is okay, and it summons 2 puppets. It's about like Divine Thunder but slightly worse. You do get puppets from this though, so it's not the worst thing ever, but it's a low tempo play that does remove 1 follower. I don't know if Pepper want to run this. Puppet doesn't actually have a good turn 4 play actually, so they might consider running this, but only as a 1 or 2 off in order to not break on having too many of this in hand. And last but not least, we have Field Scientist, which is a 5/3/4, which is below average stats that discards a card in your hand to draw 3 cards. You cycle through your deck, you thin your deck a little bit, but she doesn't answer any follower on the board. You do get to see a lot more cards though, but I think if you're relying on this to look for a specific card, you're losing your deck isn't good enough in the first place. So this is probably not gonna be run. But if you see this, know your opponent is trolling. But yes, Portal looks really, really strong, really, really interesting. On par with Abyss and Dragon actually. Is probably with this archetype, it might actually be one of the stronger archetypes this expansion. It is really good and very solid. And last but not least, let's talk about our neutrals, which is very interesting because guess what? All the cards you see so far is also review for the Jerry deck. If you forgot what a Jerry deck is, a Jerubane deck is basically a 76 card deck containing every single card from Heirs of the Omens. But let's quickly get started on the neutrals so I can finally wrap this up after like an hour of yapping. Oh my goodness. It's hour 10. It's like 10 minutes per class. Oh god. Let's finish this up. First up, Apostle of Voracity, 4/2/2, very, very below average stats, and you give another follower on the field +4/-4. You can use this to remove, you can use this to buff. It's too heavy, I don't like it. I don't think its stats doesn't contribute anything to the board. It only removes 1 follower and it's only a 4/4. It's honestly, stats are horrible, so basically unplayable. Greatness Ascender is a 4 play point draw 3. If you have no duplicates, you recover 3 play point. It could be a 1 play point draw 3, which is amazing. 4 play point draw 3 on the other hand is horrible, but this does support a no duplicate deck. So if you want something to support it, Greatness Ascender is what you're looking for. Next up, Inspirational 1 is a 2/1/3 that gains Bane when an enemy follower super evolves. This is basically a hand trap that gets additional value if your opponent plays into this. However, it's a very defensive follower at which during super evolve turns, right, you actually want more aggressive followers instead of defensive ones. So this doesn't play into their idea really well. So it feels super awkward and doesn't feel good to play, so which is why I think this is a really bad card. Dog 1 on the other hand is a 3/3/1 that gains Storm if when an enemy follower super evolves. Unlike the Inspirational 1, this is an aggressively statted, more aggro or a more punishing card that punishes enemies if they super evolve without respecting this card. Like a Storm for 3 damage isn't bad, and this could go up to 6, which is for a cost of 3, which is really strong. Like obviously you won't run too many copies of this, but you run 1 or 2 off as a punishment card just in case your opponent decided not to respect the docked 1. And then we have Tablets of Tribulation, which is a 3 play point. Banish all duplicates from your deck and draw a card. Engage every other turn. So if you have no duplicates, you get a free draw every other turn. I have a feeling that there's a deck that this will break. A deck that OTK combo deck that wants to see one copy of each of their combo piece in their hand. As of now, I don't exactly know what this is, but this does look like a quote-unquote Jerry card, or a Highlander card type of card where you just draw a bit more, get a lot more value, and try your best to win from that situation. It does look, it's a very interesting amulet. In fact, this is the one that has been on my mind the most throughout this review season, and I'm really excited to test out more decks, especially with Tablet of Tribulations, to actually have an idea of what the hell we're gonna how to break this in a certain sense. And last but not least, we have Jerry, Great Manifest. Obviously, pretty bad on his own, but he gives a very fun quote-unquote deck phenomenon where you get a 76 card deck to play with, and if you deck out, you win the game instead, and you get a 7 card hand at the start of every turn to play with. Like, that's actually kind of fun. So 11 turns after you play Jerry, you win the game. Honestly, or maybe even 10 turns after you play Jerry. No, it's probably not even going to be that long. But yeah, very funny card. I'm definitely going to be trying him out on immediately. And yeah, but other than that, I don't think there's much to say about Jerry Bay, other than the fact that he is only going to be played for the meme and nothing else. But on the other hand, Gilneal's Voracity Manifest is actually a card that is pretty decent. It's heavily nerfed from the OG version in Shadowverse 1. The Shadowverse 1 version was absolutely disgusting. Obviously, it doesn't have any attack stat, which you might be wondering why, but it will make sense in a minute. On Fanfare, she does buff a follower and reduce its defense, so you can use it to remove any 2 drops, or maybe if lucky a 3 drop. And if both players have 10 play points, you do get Sweetness of Veracity. Just to clarify, the extra play point you get going second does not count towards this max play point. And Sweetness of Veracity is a 5 play point, deal 5 to a random enemy follower and the enemy leader, which is a very weak effect. It's really heavy. I would have made this like a 3 play point effect instead to make it viable to be played. But 5 play point is probably okay, decent enough as a game ender at that point in the time. But what is the most important about Gilneal's is that she has Drain, and that she gives a follower on the field +2/-2 when she is evolved. If you second herself, she becomes a 4 attack, 4 3 play point, 4/3 followers that can drain for 4, which is a source of healing for decks without any healing. Although this does in exchange only remove 2 followers, but since she's a 3 play point, it is probably pretty fair. A very solid card. Not every deck can make use of her, but decks that doesn't actually need their evolve point and desperately need healing will run her just to get into their late game payoff cards. So the neutral cards this time are pretty solid. Well, they do support each other actually. Dog 1 is our generic card that is actually pretty good. Tablet of Tribulation and Greatness Ascender supports Jerobane, and Gilneal's it's her own archetype, and it obviously stalls out the game once again. And just quickly looking at all the cards throughout the expansion, it just makes the Jerry deck looks worse and worse. There's not a lot of innate synergy between the classes, but there is probably something you can do with Himika, with the Haven package actually. The Haven package can actually go hard. If you can drop like Marrowing, evolve it and go into a Himika, you could probably play like a sort of Haven. You can, that is probably the best class that the Jerry Haven Jerry deck could get, because they want to like store out the game a bit longer. But yes, that's basically it for the card reviews. I hope you enjoy it. This is 1 hour 15 minutes in, 10 minutes per class. I think that's really solid. Just gonna give a quick ranking of what I think are the best classes right now. I'll go with Portal at the top, then Abyss, Dragon, followed by Sword, then followed by Haven, Forest, Rune. Haven, Forest, Rune. Haven, Forest, and Rune are basically all on the bottom. No particular order there. Thank God we're not getting more Spellboost Rune support. But yeah, these three are pretty bad. The biggest losers, but Portal, Abyss, Dragon, as well as Sword all got very interesting new cards to play with. So, I'm finally done. But, so, you just give me one moment to freaking plug the channel. So if you're new to the channel, you want Shadowverse content, and you've watched this far, thank you so much. It really means a lot to me. Leave a like, leave a subscribe, and I'll see you in Heirs of the Omen. Peace.